The Washington Nationals are not just young and fun, they're also pretty good.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and right now new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started, and welcome in here to Locked On Nationals. I am your host, Ryan Clary, and we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. Later on in today's show, we're going to have a preview of this Nats-Mets series, as both these teams have, the Mets have not been very good so far, but it's still going to be a hard series for the Nationals. So we'll talk about that later on in the program today. In the second segment, we haven't had a Nats stock report in a long time. So let's get you the first in about a month. Who's been hot and who has been not? Stay tuned for that in the second segment of the show today. But the Washington Nationals are not just this young and fun team. They're also a good one at this point. And watching the series against the Orioles this weekend, I thought it was kind of a good general idea for where the Nationals are. So let's talk about it here real quick. Yesterday's game, the Nationals had an opportunity to go and be 24-23 on the season. But unfortunately, after they were 500 yesterday, they did lose that game 7-3. And unfortunately, the pitching just wasn't there. And we'll get more into that later in this show today. But I think that the Nationals right now, as an organization, they are turning a corner. And I do think that this weekend was a big telling point for kind of where this team is and where this organization is. If you look from top to bottom, from down to low A in the minors to all the way up in the majors, you have seen guys develop along this season and guys improve drastically. The first guy that I want to talk about from this weekend is Cade. How big of a weekend did he just have? He didn't play in Friday's game when the Nationals early on beat up on the Baltimore Orioles, but in the second game, he had, and this week in the last two games combined, he had two doubles. He had a home run, and he had 6 RBIs. 5 of those coming in Saturday's massive win, 13-3 against the Birds. And you have not seen this version of Cade in a very long time. And even then, it's not just guys like Ruiz. It's guys like Luis Garcia Jr. Luis Garcia Jr. is also starting to hit the baseball. You're seeing a more confident version of Luis Garcia. We haven't been able to see both of those guys really contribute probably for the last 2 years consistently. Last year, Luis Garcia Jr. was a relatively kind of a disappointment after 2 years ago, kind of having a breakout year, and Garcia looked good. And Cade was statistically last year the worst defensive catcher in baseball, but also probably one of the worst offensive catchers in the game. Cade has actually improved defensively, and not to his credit, there really was only one way to go for him, but he has improved. And I think this new ABS challenge system might be kind of helping him out a little bit, but he has adjusted to these new rules and has looked good at times defensively. Still not where I want him to be, still not an average defensive catcher, but he's no longer the worst defensive catcher. So that is an improvement. His approach at the plate, that is really has kind of been one of the big things that I've been talking about with Cade. Over the last few years now, he has just kind of seemed lost. Like when I think of someone like just a major league hitter in general, I need to know what you can do. James Wood, he's going to hit for opposite field power. CJ Abrams, he's going to have the ability to hit for power and hit for contact and get on base and be a nightmare on the base pass. Luis Garcia Jr. is going to put the ball in play. Won't be the hardest contact ever, but that's kind of what he was. Brady House, power-handed, right-handed bat. Kind of know what he is. But Cade, we just haven't really known what he is as a player. And it's not his fault at this point. That's just the reality of the situation. Keibert Ruiz is now finally starting to turn that corner where you are starting to see a little bit more power. You are starting to see that extra base threat that we all thought he was back in the day. And you are starting to see the development of many different guys at the major league level. The Nationals this weekend, in getting to that 500 mark, after losing 15 straight games dating back to 2024, when the Nationals just tried to get to that 500 mark, haven't been able to do it, and they finally broke that streak at home in the Beltway Series with a sold-out crowd on Saturday with 40,000 plus fans in the stands, and they did it. And that does mean a lot for this Nationals organization, and it meant a lot for the fans, and the fans showed out this weekend. This was probably the most exciting weekend series at Nationals Park, maybe since 2019. And I truly do mean that. When you have the Dodgers coming to town, it didn't have as much juice as what you had this past weekend, especially on Friday and Saturday's game. When teams like the Toronto Blue Jays come in town and you have Max Scherzer on the bump, it's not going to be as exciting as what we saw this past weekend. But right now, Blake Butera has got this team in such a good situation where he is pressing all the right buttons. He is doing all the right little things. And this team is starting to develop into a new brand of Nationals baseball. This has been a very fun team to watch. And I thought what this weekend was, seeing guys come up and step up to the plate with James Wood, just being James Wood all weekend long. Like, he is such a good talent. Yesterday, adding 2 hits to the equation there, scoring a run as well, and walking a guy. His OPS is now up to 900. Brady House, he even had some nice at-bats this past week, and I thought he's starting to turn a little bit of a corner. CJ Abrams continuing his hot start this season with the national leading 918 OPS at this point. You have got a lot of these guys right now that are just playing well. Jose Tena, he's hitting the baseball. Yesterday with pitching, you had Richard Lovelady start the game as the opener. Probably wasn't the best of his starts at this point, but he looked okay, I thought, coming in out of the game. And then, of course, Miles Mikolas came in, and that's kind of where we have to get a little bit south here. We did talk about this yesterday, a little bit in the post-game recap. Miles Mikolas at this point, he is hurting the Nationals. There is no way around it at this point. We have to have an opener tacked with them every single time. And I think that we've talked about with Jake Irvin that, we'll talk about that later on in the program today with Jake Irvin taking on the Mets this week. But you have got to figure out something long-term here. Jake Irvin, and not just Jake Irvin, it's Miles Mikolas, really. You have got to figure out what your plan is going forward. You cannot just go out there and throw this guy out there every 5 days. It's not working. Breaking news. And of course, Luis Perales, actually in yesterday's game, he took a line drive off his right hand. I think he should be okay. We haven't really heard too much at this point, but it was like 100+ mile per hour line drive that he took off the right hand. And I was the one saying, even just yesterday, maybe call him up and think about, the future here. And do you really want someone that can come in and be a reliable bullpen piece and do different things? But I think as we stand today, there really is no one else who is ready at this point outside of him. Andrew Alvarez is another guy who's obviously up in the bigs and who has been up in the bigs. I would consider throwing him out there over Miles Mikolas, but the status quo should not just be accepted when it comes to Miles Mikolas. And unfortunately, when the Nationals have a chance to be above 500, you would have liked to see a better performance out of one of your veteran starting pitchers. And we're just not getting that at this point. So when do the Nationals just finally say, you know what? We're done with this operation. We've got to flip things around. And when will they make that decision? Because the decision that they got to make is getting him out of this rotation. He should no longer be a starting 5 guy. It's not working. It hasn't been working. It hasn't worked from day one, from start one. I wonder if the Nationals do finally pull the plug, because in a game that you score a couple of 3 runs early on, or you should hopefully be in that game. And at first, the Nationals with Richard Lovelady, and then the Nat with Miles Mikolas just having that slow leak for a couple of innings, you never really had a chance in yesterday's game. And that was early, and that was often. You were down 3-0 after the top of the second inning, and that was really it. And as soon as Miles Mikolas comes in, I'm like, well, we kind of know where this is going to go. And we all saw where it went. The Nationals could not catch up. The offense couldn't put on their cape, and the Nationals lost 7-3 and are now 23-24 instead of maybe 24-23, and we'd be having a parade on Half Street on Nationals Park. So that's where the Nationals are at. But I thought this was a very good weekend for the Nats. They grew a lot, and I do think that tonight against the Mets, they have another opportunity getting up to that 500 mark. And then tomorrow, if they win tonight, have an opportunity to get above that 500 mark. And let's see if we can get that monkey off the back for the Washington Nationals. But next, let's get into a Nats stock report. Who's been hot and who's been not? The NBA playoffs are here, and every possession matters. And if you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. And I love using FanDuel during the playoffs because everything I need is right there in one place, whether it be player props that you can look for tonight's action with the Spurs and the Thunder, game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. You can look at tonight's game and say, you know what? I'm going to bet on Wemby going over 10.5 assists, over 10.5 boards. And of course, I'm going to take that 30+ number from Victor Wembanyama, and I'm going to make this game a whole lot better when I can ride with it with our friends over at FanDuel. And it's just a really easy app to navigate, and it makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. So head to FanDuel.com right now to get started. Again, that is FanDuel.com to get started, and make sure when FanDuel, you can play your game. And next, let me tell you about some of our very good friends over at our Everydayer Club. Pardon me, actually, our 5-Hour Energy. And if you've got a sweet tooth like I do, I know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. And that is why Cotton Candy 5-Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is that classic cotton candy taste that you remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. And I've always loved cotton candy, but I can't be eating sweet treats all day. This is a perfect alternative. And the flavor really does bring that throwback fruity vanilla vibe. And it's a surprisingly smooth. And I like how convenient it is too. It's just a small portable shot that I can grab wherever I need a little boost in my day, but also that good, satisfyingly sweet treat. So bring all the sweetness with Cotton Candy 5-Hour Energy Shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. Again, you can go to 5-Hour Energy Shots, and available online now at 5hourenergyshot.com or visit over on Amazon. If you have not done so already, make sure to check out the Locked On Nationals Everydayer Club. And again, do not forget to join us today. You can check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with myself and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonnationals.supercast.com. Let's get into a Nats stock report. Who's been up and who has been down? We start off discussing off with Daylen Lile. Daylen Lile this past week has had a monster week for the Washington Nationals, and it started really against the Cincinnati Reds just a few games ago when the kid is from Kentucky, and he had a lot of opportunities to ball out in front of his parents, and he had 2 home runs in 3 days. And over his last 7 games now, he has got 12 hits, 4 home runs, 10 RBIs, just 6 strikeouts. He's batting 400 with a 387 OBP. By the way, catch that out. He's got a higher batting average than OBP in his last 7 games. It's something you don't really see all too often, in an 867 slug on the last 7 games. And if you look even deeper than that, over his last 15 games, he's batting 304 with a 349 OBP and a 607 slug. And then over his last 30 games, he has a 263 batting average, a 333 OBP, and a 518 slug. Do you remember at first when Daylen Lile kind of got off to that slow start? And I don't think anybody was worried about where Lyle was, but I do think people were kind of wondering, like, was he that one-hit wonder? Well, he's not. This is a very good player. And this is a very good hitter who has been a lot better defensively. And I think that where Lyle stands today is he's kind of someone who starts a little bit slow. And last year, you saw him start slow. But now you're starting to see the best version of Daylen Lile, which is someone who can hit for a little bit of power, who gets on these hot streaks where he hits a couple of home runs in just a few days. And he does have that ability to be an everyday, very good, like ceiling all-star player kind of guy. That's where Daylen Lile is today. And I do believe in what he is right now. Like, this is a good, everyday, above average major league player. That's what I believe in when it comes to Daylen Lile. And I do think that someday down the road, he does have the potential to be that all-star player. So as far as Daylen Lile goes, I really like where he's at. And I think he's getting hot at the right, and things are starting to look really good for him as we sit here today. But a stock down for someone that we Miles Mikolas. I do think Miles Mikolas, like, there is a larger conversation to be had with him. But if you look at the season numbers today, he's had 10 appearances with 6 starts. I mean, even then, it's technically 10 starts. He's had an opener latched onto him, but we went over it. He's not a starting pitcher at this point. And there is a real debate whether the Nationals should probably go out there and maybe fish on the open market. Like, should they sign a veteran guy? Should they make a trade? Should they call up a Luis Perales in a handful of weeks? These are all things that you have to weigh your options for. Should you bring in Alvarez to be in the rotation and move Mikolas back into the bullpen and have him kind of be that fireman guy? Or maybe he's the opener that you have, and then you have Andrew Alvarez go 4 to 5 innings, or you have Mitchell Parker go a couple of innings, and you just kind of have to find ways to not expose Miles Mikolas, because he has been exposed, and the numbers do not lie. He's got a 6.91 ERA in his 10 starts this year, and 41 2/3 innings pitch. He has a 1.49 WHIP. It just hasn't been good. Like, he hasn't been commanding his stuff. He doesn't look like that confident veteran all-star guy that he was a few years ago. So this is just not a knock on him, but the experiment is over and you've got to make a change. And I think that the more that we put him out there, the more that we just kind of accept where this team is. And I think it's kind of a bad sign for just the future of this clubhouse. And you want guys in there that know that they will compete. And it's not to say that he's not out there competing every day. It's just there are guys who are better at this point. And you can't be flipping this storyline around and saying, oh, we're just waiting to be patient with him. You know what this is. This is what he was last year. It's what he was a couple of years ago. It's just not there. It's clearly not there. He's not meshing right now as far as the stuff, and you got to solve this problem, and it is a problem. So stock down for Miles Mikolas, but a stock up for Cade Cavalli on the other hand, who I feel like we're now saying this like back-to-back starts, but he might have just come off one of his best starts of the season and one of his best starts of his career. On Saturday, Cade Cavalli went 6 1/3, gave up 3 earned runs, struck out 8 batters, did give up those 2 jacks, but was just so good in such a pivotal game for the Nationals with 40,000 plus fans there. You had a ton of Nationals just crush the baseball on the offensive side. Cade Cavalli got it done. The Nationals got up to 500, and that was like the first And we've talked about how Foster Griffin has been the guy all year, but we know that Cavalli has got the highest ceiling as far as these pitchers go. And I think that Cavalli yesterday, 2 days ago at this point, lived up to the hype. And that is what aces do. In big games, in big moments, they shine. And Cade Cavalli shined in that game. And he commanded the Nationals. He allowed the bullpen to come in and look really good because he set them up with great opportunities there. And PJ Pullen came in, shut the door. Orlando Rebalta came in and shut the door. And of course, to end the game, you had Paxton Schultz come in and shut the door. The Nationals just looked good. And Cade Cavalli on Saturday was kind of that spark plug that the Nationals needed. So that was really good to see there. And then last but not least, a stock down for Nasim Nunez. I love Nasim Nunez, but if you look at the numbers right now, he has 6 hits in his last 37 at-bats. Defensively, we know what he is. He is a all-star, like, gold glove guy at shortstop. But outside of that, you got to work offensively. And at some point, you are so good defensively, like with JY, who just hit his 5th home run of the season, by the way, yesterday. Incredible feat for someone who doesn't really hit for power. But Nasim Nunez is in that same category, in that same tier as JY. He's so good defensively that you want to see him get playing time. And especially when you're up playing the middle infield, and if CJ goes down or whatever happens, then you have Nasim over at shortstop, and he's a very good defensive shortstop with a great arm, covers a lot of room, and does all the right things there at short. But with doing that at second base, you're not providing any power, you're not getting on base, and you're not really doing too much. And I would like to see the Nationals start to lead into a little more small ball with Nasim Nunez, and he's just going to be a guy that, with his speed and what else he does, start to try to put some bunts down and just simple things up. Like, you don't need to hit line drives. You're fast enough where if you put the ball on the ground, and I know that's Darnell Coles-esque of me, but if you can put the ball on the ground and hit it over to the left side of the infield, you've got a chance to beat out a lot of those throws. And I do wonder, like, just mechanically speaking, what the Nationals will do with Nasim, because he just looks lost at this point at the plate. He's not really seeing everything. He's not really hitting for power, not getting hard contact whatsoever, and just hasn't really been too patient up there. So I'd like to see that turn around for Nasim Nunez, because that is something that the Nationals will have to work on moving forward. But you don't have time to work on it this series because you've got the New York Mets coming into town. And that is a big series. And yes, while we are probably better right now than the New York Mets, it's not just going to be easy. So let's talk about that after this. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMS offers a straightforward way to handle it. And HIMS connects you with licensed healthcare providers online, giving you access to legitimate ED treatments from the comfort of your home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process that makes it easier to take care of yourself. And the whole process is simple. You can just complete a quick online intake and provide reviews for your information. And if treatment is right for you, it ships directly to your door in discreet packaging, which makes the whole experience feel private and stress-free. So to get simple, online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/lockedonmlb. That's hims.com/lockedonmlb for your free online visit. And of course, hims.com/lockedonmlb. We have got a big series tonight as the New York Mets are in town, and Juan Soto is there as well, as the Mets and the Nationals go toe-to-toe in what should be a very competitive series. And before we kind of get into it, I do think that, like, we should put up a caution. Like, there should be a caution across this board here wherever you're watching. And if you're watching on YouTube, just imagine there's caution tape around this Mets series. I do think this is going to be a lot harder than Nats fans are kind of realizing. And just where the Nationals are right now, I would like to see a series of which you do win this, but also I want them to play their best baseball because the Mets do have an opportunity to get back into the thick of things in the NL East. And obviously, the Braves are right now, record wise, the best team in baseball. So they're not going to catch up to the Braves anytime soon, but they could catch up to us because they're only a couple of games back. And let's say that the Mets sweep the Nationals, then the Mets would be 23 and 26, and the Nationals would be 23 and 27. So we would be a half game back from the New York Mets if they were to come in and sweep us. Now, I don't think that should be the case, but they do have good pitching still. And I do think their offense has been an absolute problem, and their defense at times has been really poor. And of course, they're missing Francisco Lindor. They're missing a ton of different guys right now, and their outfield is a whole other discussion. But the Mets have been playing some better baseball as of recently. And I do think that if the Nationals come in and just kind of lay down and accept the status quo of not playing great defense, not being as tight as they probably should be, then they'll probably have a lot harder of a situation here against the Mets than what it should be. In tonight's game, you've got Christian Scott, a right-handed pitcher, going up against Jake Irvin. The Nationals did face him once this past season, and he kind of mowed us down. Luis Garcia Jr. is the only guy to have some sort of success against him, and James Wood had a little success against him as well. Luis Garcia Jr. in his one of two at-bats hit a home run against him, so that's something that you kind of like to see. But outside of that, this is a young, unproven guy. He's been really good so far this season for the Mets. And then we've got Jake Irvin tonight, and the Mets have seen a lot of him over the years. Juan Soto, you'd like to see him stay off the bases going up against Jake Irvin. And I think tonight is the perfect night to give Juan Soto the Barry Bonds treatment. So as this series gets started, tonight's game, you want to get things going. You want to win game one and kind of fill up the rest. But as far as where the Nationals are today, you just like to see good competitive baseball with an NL East foe coming in, a team that has struggled so far early parts of this season. I'd like to see that the Mets come into town and we can kind of whip up on them. So that's obviously the dream here. And I think the Nationals should be able to do that moving forward. But thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. And of course, if you have not done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. Look it up at lockedonnationals.supercast.com. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Enjoy this Mets series. Go Nats.